So I think all the people in the waiting room should be in, and Rhiannon, thanks for admitting everyone, and hopefully you'll be able to admit more people as they come in. But I suggest we start. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today, and to my fellow speakers. I'm Dr. Haris Patsios, and I'm a senior lecturer in power systems. Just to remind everyone, you probably have seen the message that this session is recorded. So Rhiannon is in control of that, and thank you, Rhiannon, for making sure as well that this takes place and managing the whole session today. So thanks everyone for joining again. I would like to start this session, which is an part of a CESI dissemination close down event, and it's around work package 5, work package in CESI that had to do with demonstration and validation. So we're going to be talking today about this, and I'm joined by my colleagues Claire Copeland from the University of Sussex and Ian Lloyd from Siemens today, and we're all going to be giving some presentations to you about these topics, and we have some time at the end for some Q&A. Now, there is the possibility also to put questions in the chat, so you're more than welcome to put things there, and then at the end we can have a summary and hopefully a nice discussion. So we've tried to time our presentations, all three of us, to be brief, so around 10 to 15 minutes. Keeping things on time is not an art I've mastered yet, so I'll try to bundle my two presentations into one, so hopefully give you an overview of the work package, but also some specific projects and work we've done with CESI colleagues across this, like this interesting building as a power plant project that took place side by side with CESI. So I'll start by sharing my screen, and Rhiannon, just shout if something is not going right. Hopefully you can all see this, and try to put it full screen. Hope I can do it now. So again, this is our session on work package 5. As I said, it's on validation and demonstration, or demonstrators, if you like, and it was one of the vital things we thought on inception we would do in CESI. So demonstrate solutions, use these kind of demonstrations for a number of things that we thought would be worthwhile doing, like, for example, validating models that we would develop in CESI around energy systems integration, and also inform models that we've got by drawing data from various sources. So model validation, model informing, if you like, this kind of cycle through results and data, but also complement existing models or new models that we would build, because sometimes a model is not sufficient to answer all the questions that we might have. We've also used these kind of demonstrators and demonstrations to drive interesting case studies, like some of the ones we're going to be talking to you about, and Claire is going to be focusing on a particular one later on. But we've also used these demonstrators to build confidence in new technologies and applications. So especially when it comes to working with industry and strategic partners, such as Siemens, we have found a lot of use in different facilities or demonstrations that we've done to co-develop and test new solutions. So what are demonstrators? And it's a good question. I think the term we've used, the meaning of these is quite loose, if you like, and it could mean a lot of things, and it has meant a lot of things in CESI, going from things like components or laboratory facilities like the Siemens Smart Grid lab here up to sites like Newcastle Helix, for example, a site we're going to be talking about later, urban environments or rural environments, Cockle Park Farm, parts of Newcastle University's demonstrators, but also test facilities owned and operated by industrial partners like Integral, a utility scale gas and electric distribution laboratory. We've also or expanded the idea of demonstrators to include things like communities, and you can see in this picture the Findhorn community, or even whole geographical areas like the North of Tyne Combined Authority Energy System. And during the course of the project, we've drawn data from these facilities. We've used these facilities for experiment and these demonstrator sites, but we've also expanded the base of demonstrators that we had at inception to affiliate and link with other similar projects doing demonstrations like this 10 million integrity project that's using the Isle of Wight as a full-scale demonstrator. So we've both informed modeling that takes in this place and used data, but we've also collected data from these demonstrations that were happening alongside CESI, or this 9.8 million Innovate UK project, E4Future, led by Dr. Miriam Neme. That was a flagship vehicle to grid industrial research collaboration with quite a few of the industrial partners. We were working already in CESI demonstrating feasibility of vehicle to grid in UK networks. So data we've used from these demonstrators, these trials, if you've liked, as I said, we've used to inform modeling that took place during CESI, and we've used it to do some good research and publish some interesting things like how can we make microgrid operation in using different energy vectors more resilient, and tested certain things around uncertainty using things like demand data or PV data or EV data from these trials, increasing our confidence in the models and the reality of what we were simulating. As I also said, we've used experimental facilities that were in our disposal, which were included in our demonstrator base, like the facilities here on this slide, Smart Grid Laboratory and Energy Storage Testbed, doing interesting things like testing real-time control techniques, so putting in practice all the nice control and operations we were modeling in CESI, and actually try to prove that they actually work in a physical and laboratory environment. And again, we've done some interesting research, publishing papers on things such as this one, which is around frequency response services designed for energy storage, where we've tested different energy storage systems in terms of their capability to perform a network service, providing some hopefully useful insights to regulators and designers of network services. So we critiqued some of the important services that were back then when we started this project, like the enhanced frequency response service from National Grid. And we've expanded this work to include other assets where we try to combine, for example, hydrogen, gas networks through hydrogen with electricity networks, testing these kind of real-time control loops in laboratory environments, and trying to inform, if you like, the feasibility of using these kind of assets like hydrogen to couple different networks together and study the response of these devices. All this work has also created a legacy, if you like, this experimental work, and we've collaborated not only in CESI but with other EPSRC projects, building on the know-how that we've developed. So this is an example, a link with a manifest project led by the University of Birmingham, where we've taken these kind of control techniques, if you like, these processes, and we've tried to combine and orchestrate coordinated control across distributed storage systems. In this example, online testing the coordination between different facilities across the UK, like Sheffield, Oxford, and Manchester, equivalent systems and labs such as ours. And this kind of network capability also was communicated and inspired good research that we've done with strategic partners such as Siemens, and Ian is going to be talking to us later more about these things. So this is a good example, the MindSphere application center that we've established across Newcastle and Sheffield, drawing from this experience and the learnings to develop tool chains enabled by cloud analytics and domain expertise, drawing data from networks, actual battery management systems, for example, and testing optimized fleet operation and informing the operation of energy storage assets to make them more efficient, more effective when it comes to connecting them to the network. Work such as this with Siemens has also been lately upscaled and inspired new projects. So we've had during CESI quite a few new projects emerging from these collaborations and inspired from these collaborations. And again, on the area of digitalization with Siemens, drawing new partners in, like the Connected Places Catapult, the Port of Tyne, and the Northeast LEP, instrumenting the Port of Tyne into a digital hub, if you like, and proving that this kind of multi-vector, if you like, ecosystems and environments can benefit quite a lot from solutions or new solutions or newly applied solutions in these kind of multi-vector environments, such as ports from digitalization. So we've shown quite impressive, if you like, benefits in terms of numbers when digitalization or data collection comes in and informs this kind of coordination across different assets and different energy vectors. And we haven't only tested and used things like technical solutions, but one important piece of CESI, and I think quite an interesting thing, was collaborating with social scientists in the team in this kind of socio-technical, if you like, aspect. So this is a good example of a project like that, led by Professor Simone Abram from Durham University. And actually, this is a slide from her. It's not my slide. We've shown this in previous CESI events. So the idea here is to, rather than switch off, if you like, a wind turbine where there's no load, what if we were to use the power through an electrolyzer? And then again, how would control rooms of different network operators, gas and electricity, behave to be able to do this and support these kind of operations? So, as well as regulatory and institutional issues, we've looked into control room cultures, routines, expectations, as the slide suggests, and norms in different rooms to see how these might affect future integration. Taking a step approach, looking into regulatory and institutional reviews, control room observations and interviews. So we had quite a lot of discussions and interesting learnings coming from Northern Gas Networks and Northern Power Grids, then simulating things using our CESI models and doing a, if you like, a systematic study design. And while we're on sites like Integral, another important site, another important demonstrator is the Newcastle Helix, and some of you will physically come hopefully on Friday on the final dissemination and close down event. So you'll have the opportunity to look at these sites, go to Integral as well. I think this is scheduled for the day. And here we've looked into these ecosystem as living labs that provide us with data, but also we are using, as I said, to validate and inform our models. And work that has happened in collaboration alongside CESI, led by Professor Sarah Walker, who's also leading CESI, is this building as a power plant, where we investigated the capability or the capacity of the building, the urban sciences building at Newcastle Helix, to perform demand-side response. So we've used a lot of data coming from this nice and new still, but even more back then, it just opened building. It's a £58 million asset with a lot of heat metering, electrical metering, water metering, and gas metering, up to 15,000 roughly data streams logged. And we've used that data to assess the building's capability for demand-side response. So, for example, using different times in the day to change the way fresh air is supplied, and testing the capability using deferrable loads such as heat pumps, for example, to perform demand-side response. So we've changed the way, if you like, the building is behaving, hopefully to provide some network services. And we found interesting things, like there's quite a lot of possibility, a lot of potential in a building without really doing too much interference to provide demand-side response. And on average, we've measured that deferrable loads for this particular building formed around 50% of the total building electricity consumption. And most of these, up to 99.3% of them, are available instantly to partake in a demand response event. And of course, things are different with different seasons, but it shows the potential of a single building to provide demand-side response. So of course, this is not enough for the network, but the prospect of aggregating different buildings to provide a coordinated response has been quite interesting, and something that we would like to continue working on, especially given the fact that, for example, the BMS provider for this project is Siemens. So we've had several discussions around interesting things we can do together. And finally, going, if you like, a level up from components to system, and now to whole, and then to site, and then area, if you like, geographical areas. We've done analysis of things like a more expanded geographical area, including gas and electricity networks. So this North of Tyne project, looking into a wider area around the integral site at Low Thornley, at a natural conjunction of the regional gas and electricity distribution networks. So we've tested the potential, explored the potential for these networks to be more widely coupled, if you like, hopefully to improve the combined networks techno-economic and environmental performance. So we've drawn scenarios. We've used this kind of sites, these demonstrators, to inform scenarios around energy system integration and heat decarbonization. So we've drawn different potential futures, if you like, changing things like keeping business as usual in the area, or assuming increased electrification and insulation with or without systems integration. And we've tested different scenarios, and we've come across problems, real problems that we've got when we try to actually use this real data coming from different sources, different networks. And we've had to go through a quite tedious but still interesting process of synthesizing data coming from different sources, different networks, different operators. And we had to use quite a lot of assumptions, or even our models, to inform these kind of low data creation processes. So we found it's not quite easy to do this. And we don't have time to go through all these diagrams, or we can see the complexity of trying to synthesize data to inform these kind of coupled models that we've developed in CESI. And we've used this data and synthesized things like representative days for different substations, things that weren't available there either because the data was lacking, or because we didn't have proper understanding of how these networks would operate in tandem. And we found that building this complexity bottom up, if you like, which was one of the core things that CESI has done, going from component to system to site and to region, if you like, presents significant data challenges when we try to to harvest that data and even combine it, because it wasn't and it isn't being collected for purpose. However, the answers from our existing models and models that we've had before CESI could be dry, if you like, in supporting decision making, if not integrated. So in CESI, we've done a lot of modeling work that you see in other days, and hopefully informed these models from data coming from these analysis and these demonstrator sites. And we feel that this demonstration and data collection, data analysis, scenario modeling, and modeling in general needs to go hand in hand. And something we've seen in this particular project is that visualization becomes quite critical. So I think this is a brief summary of interesting things, or things that I think were interesting across the work package. And of course, we haven't worked in isolation. There were quite a few people, researchers, academics, industrialists, working on a whole entire army, if you like, of people working in this, that I couldn't really name everyone in this presentation. But thanks everyone for making this journey with us, and hopefully this gave you a brief overview of things we've done around this work package. But I will also hand over now to Claire, who is going to be talking to us actually about what I just finished with. Hopefully this study that I just showed you informed this interesting project that Claire is going to be talking to us about.
Thank you very much, Haris. Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Claire Copeland. I'm a research fellow at University of Sussex, and I've been tasked with, on the CESI programme, looking at energy futures, but from quite a different perspective, as you will discover from my presentation of a particular case study we looked at. Okay, so I hope you can all see my slide presentation there now. So yes, so what I'm going to present to you this afternoon follows on very nicely from what Haris said, looking at here at developing energy futures from a very different perspective, from a more qualitative aspect rather than quantitative and engineering perspective. And we used a particular qualitative approach to look at a particular case study called, which was the North of Tyne Combined Authority region. What we looked to address in this study was a series of questions. First of all, was how this particular approach to energy futures, how it could support decision making on local and regional scales, i.e. subnational scales. What we also did here as well is we did the development of two sets of futures. One was before the pandemic, and the second was during the pandemic. And it was interesting to look to see how people's future views had shifted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, or what we might be able to say about futures thinking and shocks in general. We also then considered what this all then meant for using energy futures for decision support on subnational scales. And as I said, we used the case study, which is the North of Tyne Combined Authority. So the futures approach that we adopted here, as I already indicated, wholly qualitative, so totally in the absence of any quantitative modelling whatsoever. And this was used, we looked at exploratory futures because we felt that with the future uncertainty, we wanted to look at a broad range of different perspectives rather than trying to predict a particular one. And we wanted to draw on futures views from stakeholders of the energy system in the region under study, so the North of Tyne Combined Authority. So I'm referring to these as the participatory exploratory futures method. And a classical way of doing exploratory futures is to use what's known as a 2x2 matrix. And the 2x2 matrix arises when you look at what are drivers for change. Well, it's one way of approaching it in terms of determining the drivers. Here we looked at drivers for change in the energy system, and we asked the participants at two workshops to identify the top two most important drivers for change in the energy system for the North of Tyne. And these drivers that the participants select then frame the 2x2 matrix, and this provides 4 distinct futures combining high and low of each of those 2 drivers, basically dividing that axes that you can see at the bottom there into 4 quadrants. So we had 2 workshops. One was in person in 2019, and we had 17 stakeholders at that one. And then we ran during the pandemic one, during lockdown in 2021, recruitment was a little bit more challenging. We had 9 participants at that one, 6 of whom were actually at the in-person workshop as well. And the discussions during that workshop, the 2x2 matrix in each workshop is shown there on the bottom. So on the left-hand side there is the 2019 2x2 matrix of energy futures, and the one on the right, the 2021 one. So no surprises, decarbonisation was a constant top driver for change in the energy system. But what was interesting was the shift in the second driver. So in the 2019 workshop, it was the stakeholders, they came to a consensus to agree that the other driver was equity. And in the 2021 workshop, it was place-based approaches was considered the second most important driver. That doesn't necessarily say, though, that equity had disappeared, because the equity does appear to some degree in the scenarios that were developed. So we found these drivers for change, and these formed our 2x2 matrix. The stakeholders were then sort of divided into groups, allocated one of the quadrants to discuss a bit further in detail and try to establish what that worldview looks like, bearing in mind high and low of the particular drivers. And at the end of the workshop, the stakeholders decided on names for each of those quadrants. So on this next slide, I'll just highlight the next 2 slides. I will highlight some of the features that were discussed in each of the workshops for the 4 different scenarios. So in the 2019 pre-pandemic one, we had the equity and decarbonisation drivers for change. And it's difficult, but there's probably not enough time to go in detail through all of them, but I'm hoping you can see by the table there, you can see how there could be quite different worldviews depending on the combination of the drivers. And you can see here too, I hope, that it's not just necessarily a technological view of the future. There are other aspects brought into this. Because we didn't use models, we were looking at more wider societal issues in that worldview. So it brought out dynamics between governance systems, as well as the economy, and as well as what might be going on in the environment. And I think that is highlighted. So, for example, you can see a minimal change. This was very much an economic growth drive worldview. However, the consequences for the North of Tyne region resulted in greater fuel poverty and more inequality. On the other hand, you've got just and sustainable, which possibly could be seen as the most ideal one, which looks at fairness and a greater egalitarian type worldview, has a stronger circular economy, and there is more emphasis on developing up skills for people in the local region too. In the 2021 during pandemic futures, there were some different aspects brought into these, not least because of the experiences during the lockdowns and during the pandemic. So, for example, Where there's high place-based approaches, there were notions of the 15-minute community, for example, where all your needs are met within a 15-minute radius of where you live. An emphasis of green spaces, but there was also issues of inequality you could see actually do arise as well. For example, in the missed opportunities, where there's low decarbonisation and a low place-based approach, this resulted in low levels of funding for the region and a lack of fairness, so there was greater inequality and fuel poverty, etc. The findings from these two sets of energy futures, when we come back to the questions that I highlighted at the start. So in terms of energy futures to support decision-making on subnational scales, adopting the method that we adopted here, what was highlighted particularly was the importance of societal factors, whether that be equity and well-being, but also the sort of local regional characteristics, the place-based approaches, how important that interaction between societal well-being and identity and sense of place, etc., how these actually fed through into the energy futures discussions. And with regards to the shock pandemic and the effects that had on futures thinking, as I've already highlighted, there were some elements that came through there with the 15-minute community idea, the need for greater access to green spaces, and looking at more better ways of working and quality employment for local citizens. But not everything was as a result of the pandemic. There was also a hastened, a palpable sense of urgency for action on net zero, and as well as there was greater certainty about decarbonising certain sectors such as transport with electric vehicles. So the implications then of adopting such approaches, the participatory method, it enabled a diversity of different worldviews to be incorporated. It can be viewed as a more democratic approach to developing energy futures, and also perhaps getting behind a future that a local populace can get behind and feel more invested in. The approach also can overcome some barriers in strategic thinking. One of the aspects that was quite striking, that was discussed in the first workshop particularly, was also difficulties in being able to imagine a world where net zero targets were not met. And that was quite interesting, an aspect that arose in the discussion. So approaching in this way, where there isn't just an assumption that net zero will be met and that the future is explored in a more holistic and wide-ranging way, enables some of that strategic thinking to come in and enables you to recognise what worldview you may be in at any one moment in time. Although here it's been without quantitative models are of course extremely important, not least for making investment decisions, and the work we've done here was carried out with a view to supporting quantitative modelling work. And I will be talking tomorrow on a pilot exercise where we carried out a translation exercise. So this research, which has been accepted for the local environment journal actually, and will be published in due course. It related to two other pieces of CESI research, was the pilot exercises I've just mentioned, but also we looked at tools for local government net zero decision making too. And there is a policy brief on that, and that looked at two case studies which overlapped with North of Tyne, but was actually Borderlands and their approach for energy master planning, and also Durham County Council too. And that's the end of my presentation. Back to you, Haris.
Thank you, Claire. Very interesting things. As I said, we have parked questions for the end. So if there is any question, just to remind you to post it on the chat until we finish with the presentations, and we'll address it in the end. So I think, Ian, if you are ready, we're also ready for your presentation.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So much.
Yeah, I am ready. And thanks, Haris. And thanks, everybody, for joining us on the call today. I'm Ian Lloyd. I represent Siemens. I'm part of the Smart Infrastructure team. I'm an executive consultant in our Power Technologies International business, and also the head of Future Power Systems within Siemens. And I'm going to tell a little story around about the relationship between us and Newcastle University and some of the others that have been involved along the way. And then we're going to focus on a couple of little projects that have been able to being facilitated between us and the university, and us and the team in the CESI element of the university, and how that's come to bear. So we're a large organisation, of course. We're a multi international conglomerate as a whole. Siemens is involved in deploying many different types of products and solutions in different types of environments, and we've been heavily involved with the region in the UK, and the UK as a whole. There's nearly 170 years worth of history where Siemens stems back from, and there's a very strong link to us in the regional development up here in the north east of England, of course. And then from that, then there stems a whole need to be able to develop and enhance and embrace different types of opportunities as we start to be able to think forward. And this is just a real snapshot in the recent years of our relationship with the university as a whole, just starting off in 2011 there, and taking us up to sort of like modern day. And there you can see, so like there's a raft of solution, a raft of different projects that are being enabled throughout the university. The university has been identified as being a part of like a key focus region. It's the star that's on the top left, and then Newcastle University themselves are identified as being principal partner status as part of our knowledge exchange sort of mechanism that gets involved there. We worked very heavily in terms of the solution development and the generation of knowledge on the back of some government funds that were made available in 2010, and they continue to be part of the innovation framework that's available today. But some of those ones started off in the low carbon network funded opportunities, where different types of technological solutions were starting to be brought to the front to be able to determine how different types of technologies could interoperate with each other for the benefit of the environment. So these decarbonisation opportunities, just to be able to take ourselves forward from where we were into where we are today, and what that looks like for the future. And we'll come to that in a little while. Haris has been very generous and mentioned our name a number of different times, but of course this comes on the back of this relationship that's being built, and the development, the investment that's been involved in the university, the development and the build of the smart grid laboratory, the interaction, and the investment that went in terms of the support of the CESI fund, and the acknowledgement of that in terms of how that project has come to its bear and now come to its close down. At the same time, there's been sponsorship of different types of professors and academic futures and doctorates, all the way through, that have been aligned to different types of technology, from cybersecurity all the way through to decarbonisation and power management opportunities. So this is where we go, and essentially there's been some real significant interest that's been involved, both regionally, nationally, and globally. We've been fortunate to have many different interested parties that have been involved with us. Some of them come from the university themselves, and some of them come from us within Siemens, just to be able to sponsor that. Not many regions have the opportunity to have executive board members from Siemens to be able to come over. We've had the luxury of having a couple to visit us, on a number of occasions, such as the interest that's been happening in the power development and the innovation works that's been going on. And ultimately, I'm talking about very quickly around about just two examples of different projects that we've been through. One was a connected batteries. It was a MindSphere application center. This is a topic about digitalization that's moving forward. And then one is around distributed energy optimization. And there's some links that's on the screen there. You can feel free to search on the Siemens website and learn about microgrids and distributed energy optimization. There's some different topics there that might be of interest to some of you. But ultimately, if I start back on the first one, this is a development case. Really, a MindSphere Innovation Network is a case of Internet of Things applications. A case of sort of taking something from the ground up, being able to understand around about whether there was a potential to be able to make the use of batteries more intelligent, to be able to enhance and extend the warranty status of so like different types of batteries, to be able to take and capture information, and to be able to promote that in terms of different digital applications, to be able to understand about how these assets could become more efficient or to extend their life cycles. There's different roadmaps that's been involved in there, and then you can see sort of there's different levels of integration and recruitment that's been through in terms of sort of like the adoption of the technologies and the abilities just to be able to enhance and embrace the relationship that existed within the university. And here's an example of what we were essentially trying to create on this different instance. There was a need for being able to understand how batteries themselves would be able to integrate with the grid. And this is sort of the important element about the Centre for Energy Systems integration there. And then there was a raft then of different types of academic learning, technology solutions, and different types of projects that we used to be able to consider and operate and then prognose and be able to adapt different types of algorithms. I mean, based on how these assets were likely to, how they were likely to work and the different types of value that could be extrapolated from them. I mean, moving forward. You see, it wasn't always just Newcastle University. We reached out across, multiple universities across the UK and many across the globe as well, just to be able to consider about the values of these types of assets and how they're likely to be able to shift us through. There was also a development here in terms of what that meant within the development of the region as a whole. And there you see Haris had some more modern pictures of the Newcastle Helix site. But when we first turned up there, it was very much a building zone. And that's the Urban Sciences building there, as it was, with the green field sites around it and the safe construction hoardings that were there just to keep people safe within that environment. But ultimately, that is where we were. That is where we started. That is the end phase. So, like that building and construction that was there. And then within the building, of course, there was the linkage of the people that was important, and of course, then development about how we were likely to use the space and how that was likely to be enhanced then in terms of different types of learning and how they could be applied. So within Siemens, there's a real interest there in terms of how we are able to leverage that. We have the Siemens Smart Infrastructure business. We have our own experts that's in there. We have our core corporate technology portfolio, and then the experts from within the university themselves that were able to take these different types of opportunities and translate them into new different types of products, new areas of interest, and develop new skills and new knowledge to be able to take ideas forward and to be able to develop people. This is just a roadmap of that battery project again, but essentially there's the roadmap for it that takes us from the development of the minimum viable product all the way through to business as usual transition. Now within this laboratory space, there was also the opportunity just to be able to develop the MindSphere Innovation Network, and this was a solution to be able to advise around about how different types of technologies could be promoted by the use of intelligence and by the use of deep data, and how that could be aligned, which became a very important piece in terms of how energy systems and energy systems integration can all start to become an interoperable part of networks moving forward, as Haris explained in some of the other elements, especially that as the building as a power plant. So here's just very briefly, just in a very short space of time, we were able to develop applications, we were able to connect data, we were able to be able to stream data from different assets, and we were able to develop applications and algorithms to be able to advise about how different systems themselves could become interoperable, how they could interoperate with a building as a whole, and how a building can interoperate as an orchestrated mass with many other buildings across different zones and different sites. Now, as I shift on now, more interestingly and more recently, we've been considering about what the level of impact is likely to be, and how the levels of impact of industrial demonstrators have been able to be taken forward. So we've been involved in the Clean Maritime Demonstrator Fund. This is with the Port of Tyne and Connected Places Catapult, Newcastle University, and the local enterprise partnership has been involved has been able to address the types of benefits that are likely to be achieved if applications and off the back of the demonstrators that have been achieved and within the world of CESI, within the world of Siemens themselves, and then the opportunity just to be able to work on the appetite and the ambitions for local organisations like the Port of Tyne to be able to embrace decarbonisation opportunities, shifting forward, and how we can adapt the learning that we've achieved on some of these other projects to be able to demonstrate about how an environment like a port can embed themselves with different types of technology, including renewable generation, energy storage, and a whole raft of other solutions to be able to promote this world of decarbonisation. And then if it's possible, of course, within one port environment, and how that can be replicated and transferred to other ports across the UK and across the globe, of course, is a keen interest in terms of the decarbonisation of the maritime industry as a whole. So essentially, we started off with this graphic, an infographic, of course, about being able to understand about how technology, what the different elements of digitized control and how connected assets could start to be able to become a hoard of valuable data and information to be able to allow us to be able to consider the types of solutions that could be applied to be able to control and be able to modulate some of those loads within the facility, and how to be able to secure the data to be able to manage energy in an entire domain that sits on there. But of course, it's not all hard technology solutions and hard processes. There's a number of different opportunities that's there in terms of cross-vector energy management, the ability to be able to defer energy from one source to another one, to be able to improve the cost position, the CO2 position within the port environment, to be able to apply ourselves in terms of how we can replicate this elsewhere, how we can generate, the region as another area of keen interest in terms of the lighthouse of thought leadership and informed business futures. And then also how we can apply ourselves in terms of being able to address digitalization, new skills and new uptakes, really answering the questions around prosperity that could come from the adoption of energy systems and their integration. And essentially, here we are. It's a large visual graphic here in terms of this distributed energy optimizer platform that we've applied within the Port of Tyne environment. Gives us an opportunity just to be able to capture the energy that's being consumed on the site today, and start to be able to consider then about how those different energy vectors can now start to become interrelated with each other. How electricity can link to gas, how gas can link to transport, and how then the operation within the port environment can be enhanced in terms of being able to use that data that's available to be able to inform a better future. Ultimately, we start off with that graphical view that I just posted on the previous slide, but this gives us the view about where we are today and then the future elements in terms of how we can adopt different types of enabled sector coupling to really drive the benefits across a full port ecosystem, and the intelligent mobility solutions that applies to road and rail and air freight that comes in and out of our very important transport environment that the ports make up. We started off, of course, with an electrical power environment. This is very frequently the area of primary concern when it comes to constraints, the management of energy, and the ability to be able to balance energy from one sector to another one. And then, of course, we're able to interlink that then in terms of how we can use different types of new technologies to be able to decarbonize different types of environments. And the importance really leads us to, what does this mean for us going forward? Of course, this is another graphic around about the actual platform that's been demonstrated in terms of the different types of views that can be created within this digital environment within the port. How data can become a very important element in terms of being able to promote different types of technologies, how we can synthesize them and simulate how different types of solutions will play an important role about how the port goes from its state today into a very clean, sustainable state, shifting forward to the future. And then ultimately about how we can sectorize and create some zonal controls within different types of environments, just to be able to consider. And of course, this gives us the opportunity then in terms of being able to shift forwards and to be able to adopt the different types of technology and to be able to select interplay them around about how they can relate into other zones and other areas, on both the national and international benefits. So there's some real clear interest in terms of how these types of technologies have been supported with the work that we've done at Newcastle University, how that's been embedded within the key areas of focus interest within the CESI team, and how these different projects have actually turned into real live demonstrators and living laboratories that give the opportunity for real impact and value to become promoted across the global front of energy management. And Haris, I think I can hand back to you there now, and
Okay.
to deal with any questions and to close off.
Thanks, Ian. So this was the final presentation we had in this kind of, if you like, appetizer for the main thing on Friday, where I just want to remind everyone that it's taken place in the Urban Sciences Building, Rhiannon. I hope I'm giving the right information here, and hope to see all of you there. There is one question in the chat coming from Andrew, and it's for Claire and Ian. So I'm off the hook now. If Claire and Ian, you want to have a go at it, it's around hybrid interconnections that they're working on between Norway and the UK, and looking to provide some large-scale green battery storage. Do you think interconnection and storage between these countries will help or hinder regional developments and decision making? It's a bit well, it's a tough question to answer, I suppose, in such a brief amount of time. So I don't know if Ian first, if you want to have a go at it with some observations, and then Claire, and I'll do my best as well to help.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew. It's a really good question, actually. And of course, is there an issue with interconnection and storage between these two countries? No, there's not an issue. Should there be a benefit? Yes, of course there should be. There's whole topics about securities of supply and energy resilience, the ability just to be able to adopt, different carbon elements that could come from different countries at lower sources and of course at lower costs at the same time. Each of these different technologies, they come. If there was just one interconnector, then I'd say that there's a significant risk, but there's not. There's a number of different interconnectors now that start to be able to build up our reserves of, that comes in terms of energy resilience as a country as a whole. But there's some clear opportunities in terms of how we can use that energy, potentially how we could store that energy, and each of those things also start to relate to what does the carbon footprint of the UK naturally look like? If it gives us an opportunity just to be able to defer or avoid the use of conventional fossil fuel burn, by the use of more renewable generation that's accessible, that's been produced in abundance in other zones that they don't have the opportunity just to be able to consume it all within their own locale, then it's better to be able to ship it out to other countries that actually can use it to the best value. And it does come at a cost, of course. These different types of technologies, it comes at significant technological development and interest and the detail of operations and maintenance of these assets that goes inherent with their construction and their build. But but ultimately there is no reason why it should hinder regional development, and it should really amplify, I mean, the opportunities within the region, just to be able to consider the different types of topics that I mentioned previously. There's new skills, new learnings, new opportunities, new developments of markets that is even, has a potential to be able to adopt these different types of energy systems, their import and their application for how they connect to the existing networks is all of real key primary interest.
And to add, I mean, obviously Ian, there you go, very, very detailed response there. Obviously lots of opportunities with such an interconnection. However, there are other considerations from a more regional societal perspective in terms of what kind of companies are involved, the timeframes. Is it really going to develop skills for people in the regions that are affected? And what knock-on consequences there may be of the development. Really, in order to be able to fully answer those questions, you have to look further than the possibly on the aggregate economic benefit, but the local economic benefits and how that filters through to citizen well-being in the regions affected.
Thank you both. I think we're risking of running out of time, so I won't add anything, but is there any other questions? We're very close to the close. So
I've got one for Claire, if we don't mind.
Yes, absolutely, Rhiannon, go on.
So towards the end of your presentation, Claire, you mentioned that, that the futures thinking should still have a quantitative model to back it up and things like that. But I was just wondering on your opinions, do you think that the government could or should use futures thinking like yours to improve net zero targets and how we can use those models for net zero targets in the future?
Thank you, Rhiannon. That's a really good question. Certainly in terms of government decision making on energy systems, there has been a reliance on more quantitative modelling in the past. However, as is becoming more apparent, certainly in the assessments by the Climate Change Committee, is technological approaches are only going to get us so far. And actually, I think in their latest assessment on net zero, now more than half the emissions reduction for net zero needs to come from people making low carbon choices. So quantitative models will only get us so far. I think there is a need also to explore the more societal and governance framings within that, in order to bring about net zero on time. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. So I think we're out of time. There's one question from Laura. If there's any particular technology or approach the Northeast can bring. I think we've done a lot around digitalization, Laura, in the university and throughout CESI. A lot around hydrogen. We are going to be doing more. So I think there's quite a lot of opportunities in these things and combinations. Just to answer this with a very quick comment, because we're out of time. So unless Claire and Ian want to add anything there, I think we need to close down the session. So if you have anything to add as a response to Laura's comment, very brief.
No, I don't think there's a particular technology. I think there's a mix of all. I think that's the real solution, really shifting forward. There'll be a range of opportunities just to be able to drive it. One of them may lead and be more powerful than others, but really there's a congregated mass of new technologies, new solutions, and new processes and products that will be available today, and those that will come tomorrow. That will mean like about what we can do to be able to adopt and achieve net zero for a whole country and not just for the region.
Thanks, Ian and Claire.
Yeah, I mean, just following on what I've been saying previously is, you know, as well as the technological feasibility and economic feasibility, there has to be the societal feasibility, and citizens need to be able to get behind a particular future worldview that's in line with the net zero challenge in order to most effectively bring that into realization.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks again for all the participants and the speakers, and hope to see you all on Friday. So I'm closing this session, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hope it was interesting. Thank you. Bye.